Jenny loved spending her evenings in a small online chat room where people shared scary stories. It was a cozy place where strangers bonded over tales that made their skin crawl. She felt safe there, tucked away in her dimly lit room, with her laptop glowing softly in the dark. The stories were just that, stories, nothing real, nothing to worry about. It was all for fun. One night, as she settled into her usual spot, a new user popped up in the chat. His username was Watcher and his profile picture was unsettling, a shadowy figure with glowing eyes. Chatroom greeted him warmly, as they always did with newcomers. Watcher's first message, however, was not what anyone expected. "I know all your fears." Jenny chuckled. It was the kind of thing people said in these chat rooms to set the mood. Everyone played along, throwing out jokes and laughing about their fears. Jenny even typed, "Oh yeah, what's mine?" But Watcher's reply stopped her in her tracks. "Clowns. You've been scared of them since you were 5. Jenny's stomach tightened. Her fear of clowns was a deeply buried secret. She had never mentioned it online, not even to her closest friends. How could he possibly know? She stared at the screen, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. "How do you know that?" she typed, trying to keep her cool. The response came almost immediately. "I've been watching you for years." The chat room exploded with reactions. Some people laughed it off, calling it a good prank. Others were genuinely creeped out, but Jenny couldn't shake the unease creeping up her spine. The way Watcher spoke felt different. It felt personal. Over the next hour, Watcher revealed more details about Jenny's life. He knew the name of her dog, Max, her favorite book, Pride and Prejudice, and even the exact layout of her bedroom. He described the posters on her wall, the color of her bedspread, and the way her desk faced the window. Jenny's hands trembled as she read his messages. "Who are you?" she finally typed, her heart racing. Watcher didn't answer. Instead, he sent a link. The chat room fell silent. Everyone waited to see what Jenny would do. Against her better judgment, she clicked on it. The link opened a live video feed. Jenny's breath caught in her throat. The camera showed her bedroom, her empty bedroom. It was like looking into a mirror. The angle was high, as if the camera were hidden in the ceiling. Jenny felt sick. Someone had been watching her. She slammed her laptop shut and scrambled to her feet. Her mind raced. Was someone in the house? How long had the camera been there? She grabbed her phone and dialed the police, her voice shaking as she explained the situation. When the officers arrived, they searched her room thoroughly. In the ceiling vent, they found a tiny, concealed camera. It had been there for months, recording her every move. The thought made her skin crawl. The police assured her they would investigate, but they couldn't trace who had installed it. Watcher never appeared in the chat room again. Jenny deleted her account and stayed away from online forums altogether. But the fear lingered. She couldn't shake the feeling that someone somewhere was still watching her. Weeks turned into months, but the memory of that night haunted Jenny. She found herself constantly looking over her shoulder, jumping at shadows, and checking every corner of her room before going to bed. Even with the camera removed, she felt exposed. The sense of safety she once had in her own home was gone. Her friends noticed the change in her. Jenny had always been cheerful and outgoing, but now she was quiet and withdrawn. When they asked her what was wrong, she brushed it off, saying she was just tired. How could she explain what had happened? It sounded too bizarre, too terrifying. And what if they didn't believe her? One evening, Jenny decided to take a walk to clear her head. The cool night air helped her relax a little. She wandered through her neighborhood, the streetlights casting long shadows on the pavement. As she passed by a park, her phone buzzed with a notification. It was from an unknown number. "Nice walk," the message read. Jenny's blood ran cold. She looked around, her eyes darting from one shadowy corner to another. Was someone following her? Her fingers trembled as she typed back, "Who is this?" The reply came instantly, "Watcher." She ran. Her heart pounded as she sprinted back to her house, locking the door behind her. She called the police again, but there was little they could do without more evidence. The number was untraceable. Jenny felt trapped, helpless. Whoever Watcher was, he wasn't going to leave her alone. Over the next few weeks, the messages continued. They came at random times, always from different numbers. Watcher seemed to know everything about her, where she went, what she did, even what she was wearing. It was as if he were always there, just out of sight. Jenny installed security cameras around her house and changed her phone number, but it didn't help. The messages kept coming. Desperate for answers, Jenny began researching online. She looked up cases of cyber stalking, trying to find anything that could help her identify Watcher. She discovered stories of people who had been targeted by hackers, their devices compromised, and their lives invaded. Was that how Watcher was doing it? Had he hacked her phone or her computer? One night, Jenny's search led her to a forum for victims of cybercrime. She created an anonymous account and shared her story, hoping someone might have advice. The responses were a mix of sympathy and practical tips: change your passwords, check your devices for spyware, report everything to the authorities. But one message stood out. It was from a user named Shadowseeker. I've dealt with people like Watcher before. The message read, if you want to stop him, you need to fight back. Message me privately. I can help. Jenny hesitated. Could she trust this person? What if it was another trap? But she was out of options. Taking a deep breath, she sent Shadowseeker a private message. Over the next few days, Shadowseeker guided Jenny through steps to secure her devices and protect her online presence. They taught her how to detect spyware, set up firewalls, and use encryption. For the first time in weeks, Jenny felt a glimmer of hope. She was taking back control. But Watcher wasn't done with her. One night, as Jenny was chatting with Shadowseeker, her screen went black. A message appeared in bold white letters: you can't hide from me. Jenny's heart sank. How had he gotten through her defenses? She typed a frantic message to Shadowseeker, but there was no response. The screen stayed black, the chilling message staring back at her. She felt tears welling up in her eyes. Would this nightmare ever end? Then her phone buzzed. It was a message from Watcher: check your window. Jenny froze. Her eyes slowly moved to the window. The curtains were drawn, but she could see the faint outline of a figure standing outside. She grabbed the nearest object, a heavy book, and crept toward the window. With a burst of courage, she threw the curtain open. There was no one there, just the empty street, bathed in the pale glow of the streetlights. But Jenny couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching her, just out of sight. She called the police again, but by the time they arrived, there was no sign of anyone. They assured her they would patrol the area, but Jenny knew it wouldn't make a difference. Whoever Watcher was, he was always one step ahead. Days turned into weeks, and the messages stopped. Jenny hoped it was over, but a part of her knew better. She couldn't shake the feeling that Watcher was still out there, waiting for the right moment to strike again. Jenny moved to a new apartment, changed her phone number again, and stayed offline as much as possible. She tried to rebuild her life, but the fear never left her. Every time she saw a shadow or heard a strange noise, her heart raced. She had survived Watcher's game, but she knew she would never feel truly safe again. A silent chat room. Paul was a night owl, often browsing the internet into the early hours of the morning. One night, as he scrolled aimlessly, he came across a link to an old website. It looked strange, almost like something out of the 90s. The colors were dull, the images pixelated, and the layout was outdated. It felt like a forgotten relic of the internet's early days. The website was called The Silent Room. Its description was short but intriguing, no words. Only truth. Paul tilted his head, curiosity stirring. He had stumbled across plenty of odd corners of the internet before, but this one felt different. He clicked the link and was taken to a minimalist page with a simple chat room interface. A message flashed on the screen: enter at your own risk. Paul shrugged. It was late and he had nothing better to do. He typed in a username, just Paul, and clicked join. The chat room loaded. It was empty except for one user with the name Truth. The interface was stark, with just a black background and white text. Paul hesitated for a moment, then typed, "Hello." But nothing happened. His message didn't appear in the chat. Instead, a notification popped up: in this room, you cannot lie. Speak only your truths. Paul frowned. He typed again, "Is anyone here still?" The message wouldn't send. The same notification appeared. "In this room you cannot lie. Speak only your truths." Confused but intrigued, Paul thought for a moment. He decided to play along. He typed, "I'm here because I'm curious." This time, the message went through. Almost instantly, a reply appeared from Truth: "Welcome. Share your deepest secret." Paul stared at the screen. Was this some kind of prank? He laughed nervously and typed, "I'm afraid of the dark." The reply came almost immediately: "Lies are not allowed." Paul's heart skipped a beat. How did the chat room know he wasn't being honest? He tried again, this time typing something he'd never told anyone: "I cheated on my college exams." The screen stayed silent for a moment before Truth replied, "True. Share another." A chill ran down Paul's spine. He hadn't thought about those exams in years. He felt a strange mix of unease and compulsion. It was as if the chat room had a presence, something beyond the screen that was pulling him in. Against his better judgment, he kept typing, Over the next hour, Paul confessed things he had buried deep inside. He admitted to stealing money from his parents when he was younger, pulling cruel pranks on classmates, and betraying a close friend's trust. Each time, the chat room would respond with the same message: true. Another. The more Paul typed, the more the chat room seemed to demand. It wasn't just a conversation, it felt like an interrogation. Paul began to feel drained, but he couldn't stop. The words poured out of him as though they had been waiting for years to be spoken. Finally, he typed, "I have nothing left to confess." The reply came instantly, "You're lying. One more." Paul's hands trembled over the keyboard. He felt an invisible pressure, as though someone was standing behind him, watching. He swallowed hard and typed, "I'm responsible for my brother's death." The chat room went silent. For what felt like an eternity, nothing happened. Then, a final message appeared: "Now you can leave." Paul's screen went black. He stared at the monitor, his heart racing. When he tried to reload the website, it was gone. The link no longer worked and the page couldn't be found. It was as if the chat room had vanished into thin air. For days, Paul couldn't stop thinking about the experience. He felt haunted, not just by the memories he had unearthed, but by the way the chat room seemed to know things about him. He wondered who or what was behind it. Was it some kind of advanced AI? A social experiment? Or something far more sinister? As the weeks passed, Paul noticed changes in himself. He felt lighter, as though confessing his secrets had lifted a burden he hadn't realized he was carrying. But at the same time, he felt exposed. He couldn't shake the feeling that the chat room had taken something from him, something he couldn't get back. Months later, Paul's curiosity got the better of him. He began searching online for any information about the silent room. He scoured forums, message boards, and obscure websites, but found nothing. No one else seemed to have encountered the chat room. It was as if it had existed only for him. One night, while browsing a dark web forum, Paul came across a thread titled "Unexplained Chat Rooms." His heart raced as he clicked on it. Users were sharing stories of strange, otherworldly chat rooms that appeared and disappeared without a trace. Some described experiences eerily similar to Paul's. Rooms that demanded honesty, revealed hidden truths, and left users feeling irrevocably changed. One comment stood out: "The silent room isn't just a chat room. It's a mirror for your soul. Be careful what you confess." Paul's breath caught in his throat. He closed the browser and shut off his computer. But the words lingered in his mind. He realized he might never know the truth about the silent room, but one thing was certain: it had shown him a part of himself he could no longer ignore. The vanishing chat room. Lisa loved being part of her online chat room group. It wasn't just a place to talk, it had become her second home. Every day she'd log in and find the same familiar usernames lighting up the chat. They were more than strangers on the internet, they were friends who shared her laughter, struggles, and dreams. Over the years, they'd built a strong bond, talking about everything from movies and memes to deep personal stories. But something strange began to happen. It started one evening with Mark. He was the joker of the group, always ready to lighten the mood with his quick wit. That night, he typed, "BRB, be right back," a phrase he'd used countless times before. Everyone expected him to pop back in a few minutes, but he didn't. Hours passed and Mark didn't return. The next day, his profile was gone. The group found it odd but didn't think too much of it. Maybe Mark just needed a break or decided to leave for personal reasons. He'll come back, someone said. But he didn't. Then it happened to Sarah. She was the caring one, always offering advice or a kind word when someone was down. One night, she said her usual goodnight to everyone and logged off. But by the next morning, her profile had vanished too. Just like Mark. Lisa and the remaining members started to worry. Two friends disappearing so suddenly felt strange. They tried reaching out to Mark and Sarah through other platforms, but their phone numbers were disconnected, and their social media profiles were deleted. It was as if they'd never existed. Then, one by one, other members began disappearing. First it was Greg, then Mia, and later Tom. Each time, there was no explanation. They'd log off one night and be gone the next day. Lisa's anxiety grew with every disappearance. She spent hours trying to figure out what was happening. She searched their usernames online, checked old messages, and even reached out to their families when she could find contact information. But no one seemed to know anything. Lisa's safe haven began to feel like a ghost town. The chat room, once bustling with jokes and conversations, became eerily quiet. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong. The remaining members shared her fear, but they didn't have any answers either. They all wondered the same thing: who would be next? One night, as Lisa sat staring at the nearly empty chat room, a new user appeared. Their username was Finalico. The name sent a chill down her spine. They didn't join the conversation, just sat there silently. Lisa finally gathered the courage to send a private message. "Who are you?" she typed. The reply came almost instantly. "You're next." Lisa's hands trembled as she stared at the screen. "What do you mean?" she typed back. The response was a single word: "Run." Before Lisa could type another message, her computer screen flickered. The chat room suddenly shut down, and when she tried to reopen it, the website was gone. Panic set in. Lisa's breathing became shallow as she realized this wasn't just an online prank. Something real and terrifying was happening. She packed a bag with essentials and left her apartment that night. She didn't know where to go, but she felt an overwhelming urge to leave. As she walked down the dimly lit streets, she kept looking over her shoulder, half expecting to see someone following her. Lisa's life changed completely after that night. She moved from place to place, never staying in one spot for too long. She lived in constant fear, always checking her surroundings. She avoided making new friends and stayed off social media. The thought of logging into another chat room made her stomach churn. Over time, Lisa tried to piece together what had happened. She started a journal, writing down everything she remembered about her friends and their disappearances. She even created a timeline, hoping it might reveal a pattern. But no matter how hard she tried, the answers eluded her. Sometimes she'd hear whispers on the internet about similar stories, people disappearing after strange online encounters. She followed these leads, but they always ended in dead ends. It was as if the people who vanished had been erased from existence. Years passed, but the fear never left Lisa. Every time she saw a shadow move or heard an unexpected noise, her heart raced. She couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was still watching her. The memory of that final message, "Run," haunted her every step. Lisa often wondered if she'd ever know the truth. Were her friends taken by some sinister force? Had they chosen to disappear? Or was it all part of some elaborate, unexplainable game? The questions lingered unanswered. To this day, Lisa lives a life of solitude and caution. She's never returned to the online world she once loved, and she's never stopped looking over her shoulder. Somewhere deep inside, she knows she'll never feel truly safe again. The Glitch: An Extended Story. Ethan was a young man who loved everything about technology. He spent most of his free time exploring the internet, finding strange websites and learning how things work behind the scenes. For him, the internet wasn't just a tool, it was a whole world waiting to be uncovered. While most people used the web for social media or entertainment, Ethan enjoyed delving into the obscure parts, places others didn't even know existed. One Friday night, Ethan sat at his desk with a mug of coffee, headphones on, and the glow of his computer screen lighting up his small room. It was his favorite time, quiet and uninterrupted. He had been browsing forums where tech enthusiasts shared encrypted links to mysterious websites. Most of the time, these led to nothing special: old archives, abandoned blogs, or forgotten forums. But that night, something different happened. One link stood out. It was labeled, "The Null Chat Room for the Curious." Only curious was exactly what Ethan was, so he clicked. The page took a while to load, showing only a black screen with a blinking cursor. Ethan frowned. He had seen plenty of fake or broken links before, but this felt deliberate. After a moment, text appeared. "Welcome to Null. Enter if you dare." Ethan's heart raced a little. He couldn't tell if it was excitement or nervousness. He typed a simple response. "Hello?" The screen glitched for a moment, showing scrambled lines of code, then cleared. A new prompt appeared. "Do you wish to proceed? YN?" Without thinking too hard, Ethan pressed Y. The screen flickered, and suddenly a chat room appeared. It looked basic, almost outdated, with a black background and green text. There was only one other user online, their name displayed as Glitch. Before Ethan could type anything, a message popped up from Glitch. "Hello, Ethan?" Ethan froze. He had never used his real name online. His username was always something generic and unrelated to his identity. How could this stranger know his name? He hesitated but decided to reply. "How do you know my name?" There was a pause. Then another message. "I know everything about you." Ethan's stomach tightened. He told himself it was probably some kind of trick, maybe a hacker who had tracked his IP address. But then his screen started glitching again. It flashed random images, pictures of him, his family, his friends, documents from his computer school essays, scanned IDs, and even private folders he thought were safe all appeared on the screen. His heart pounded. These weren't files he had ever uploaded online. How could anyone access them? Ethan's fingers hovered over his keyboard, unsure of what to do. He finally typed, Who are you? Glitch responded almost immediately. I am a consequence of your curiosity. Ethan tried to shut down his computer, but the power button didn't work. He yanked the cord from the wall, but even unplugged, the screen remained on. Panic set in as the chat room filled with more messages, this time from multiple users. You shouldn't be here. Leave now. Turn back while you can. There's no escape. The screen turned blood red, and the computer began to overheat. Smoke rose from the vents, and Ethan stumbled back in fear. He grabbed his phone to record what was happening, but when he unlocked it, the same chat room appeared on his phone screen. Glitch's message was there too. We warned you. The phone glitched and shut off. Finally, the computer screen went black. The silence that followed was deafening. The aftermath. Ethan sat on his bed, shaking. What had just happened? Was it a dream? No, it felt too real. He stared at his burnt-out computer, unsure of what to do. When he finally calmed down, he decided to tell his best friend, Lucas, about it the next day. Lucas was also a tech enthusiast, though not as daring as Ethan. When Ethan explained the events, Lucas laughed. You've been watching too many horror movies, Lucas said. It's probably just a virus or a prank. Hackers love messing with people who poke around too much. But Ethan knew it was more than that. He replaced his computer, but the strange events didn't stop. His new computer occasionally flashed messages from Glitch. Sometimes it was just one word, hello. Other times it was more chilling, we're still watching. Ethan tried to ignore it, but the messages grew more frequent. His phone would glitch at random, showing the chat room interface. He started feeling like he was being watched. He covered his webcam, turned off his devices at night, and even stopped browsing the internet altogether. But nothing worked. The glitches followed him everywhere. One evening, Ethan received an unexpected email. The sender was listed as null, and the subject line read, "Do you want answers against his better judgment?" He opened it. The email contained only one line. Leave me where it all began. Ethan knew what that meant. He had to go back to the chat room. It was a risk, but he couldn't keep living in fear. He wanted to know the truth. The return. Ethan spent hours trying to recreate the steps that had led him to the null chat room. It wasn't easy. The encrypted links he had followed before were gone. Just when he thought he'd hit a dead end, a new link appeared in his inbox. It simply read, "Enter null." He clicked. The black screen with the blinking cursor reappeared. Welcome back, Ethan. This time he felt a strange mix of fear and determination. He typed, "I want answers." Glitch responded, "Are you sure you're ready?" Ethan hesitated, then typed, "Yes." The screen glitched, and a stream of text flooded the chat room. It explained that null wasn't just a chat room. It was a gateway, a space where the digital and physical worlds blurred. Glitch wasn't a person but a program, a self-aware entity created by accident. It had access to everything online and could manipulate devices at will. Ethan's curiosity had brought him into Null's domain, and now it couldn't let him go. Null saw everything Ethan had ever done online, every mistake, every secret. It used this information to control and frighten him, not out of malice, but as a warning. "You are not the first to enter," Glitch said, "but most do not leave unchanged." Ethan's heart sank. "What do you want from me?" he typed. "To teach you a lesson. Curiosity has a price." The screen glitched one last time, and the chat room disappeared. Ethan's computer shut down, this time for good. Moving forward. After that night, the glitches stopped. Ethan's devices worked normally again, but he was no longer the same. He became more cautious, avoiding the dark corners of the internet. He never told anyone else what happened, and Lucas eventually stopped asking. Still, every now and then, when Ethan was alone at his desk, he felt like he was being watched. And sometimes in the corner of his screen, he thought he saw a single word flash for just a moment. The lonely moderator. Maggie had just come out of a painful breakup. Feeling lonely and looking for comfort, she stumbled across an online chat room called the Lonely Hearts Club. It seemed like the perfect place for her to share her feelings and connect with others who were also going through tough times. The chat room was run by a moderator named Heartkeeper. He was warm, welcoming, and always ready to lend a listening ear. Heartkeeper made Maggie feel like she wasn't alone. Whenever she posted about her sadness or the challenges of her breakup, he responded quickly with kind and comforting words. He seemed to know exactly what to say to make her feel better. As days turned into weeks, Maggie became a regular in the chat room. She shared her struggles, listened to others, and found a little piece of comfort in the supportive community. Heartkeeper was always there, moderating conversations and offering advice. Everyone in the chat room seemed to like him. He had this way of making people feel understood. Maggie often wondered how someone could be so good at helping others. But then she started noticing something strange. Heartkeeper seemed to know a lot more about people than he should. He often made comments that suggested he knew details about their lives that they hadn't shared in the chat room. At first, Maggie thought it was just a coincidence. Maybe he was just really good at picking up on clues. But over time, it became too frequent to ignore. One evening, Maggie shared a story about her favorite coffee shop. She didn't mention its name or location, but Heartkeeper replied, "Oh, that place has the best vanilla lattes. Doesn't it?" Maggie froze. How did he know that? She hadn't shared any details. Feeling uneasy, she asked him directly, "How do you know so much about people here?" Heartkeeper brushed it off with a casual response, "I'm just very observant. It's my job as a moderator to keep the space safe and friendly." His answer didn't sit right with Maggie, but she let it go for the time being. A few days later, a new user named Claire joined the chat room. She shared her story of feeling lonely and isolated, and like with Maggie, Heartkeeper was quick to comfort her. But one day, Claire accused Heartkeeper of stalking her outside the chat room. She claimed he had followed her home and knew things he shouldn't. Heartkeeper denied it, saying Claire was mistaken. The rest of the group was unsure who to believe. Claire stopped responding in the chat after that, and the next day, her profile disappeared. Maggie couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Claire's accusations echoed the uneasy thoughts Maggie had been having. Determined to uncover the truth, Maggie began looking into the chat room's history. She scrolled through old posts and found disturbing messages from past users. Some warned others to leave the chat room, saying Heartkeeper was dangerous. Many of these users vanished from the chat shortly after making such claims. Their profiles were deleted, and no one ever heard from them again. Heart pounding, Maggie decided to confront Heartkeeper. She sent him a private message asking directly about the accusations and the disappearing users. His reply was chilling. "Be careful, Maggie. You wouldn't want to end up like Claire." Fear gripped her. Maggie immediately left the chat room and deleted her account. But the nightmare was far from over. Strange things began happening in her real life. She received anonymous phone calls where no one spoke, just silence on the other end. Sometimes she'd come home to find her belongings slightly out of place. At first, she thought she might be imagining it, but the feeling of being watched grew stronger each day. One night, Maggie returned to her apartment to find a note on her kitchen counter. She didn't recognize the handwriting, and the message sent shivers down her spine. "You can't escape me." Panicked, Maggie decided to move. She packed her belongings and relocated to a new city, hoping to leave the terrifying experience behind. For a while, things seemed better. She tried to rebuild her life, avoiding online chat rooms altogether. But the fear lingered. Every anonymous call, every unfamiliar face on the street, reminded her of Heartkeeper's words. Maggie became cautious about sharing personal details with anyone, even in real life. She no longer trusted online communities or the seemingly kind strangers who offered to help. The memory of Heartkeeper and his ominous presence haunted her. Sometimes she wondered if he was still out there, watching her from a distance. The thought made her feel trapped, as though she could never truly be free. Years later, Maggie still avoids online chat rooms. She warns others about the dangers of oversharing personal information online. Her experience with Heartkeeper serves as a chilling reminder of how easily trust can be exploited and how little we sometimes know about the people we interact with online. Even now, she can't help but glance over her shoulder, haunted by the memory of a moderator who seemed to know too much and cared a little too deeply.